the 10 most underrated books I read since I started my Booktube channel. Now, I started my Booktube channel around 18 months ago, and I have read a lot of books. And I know we booktubers, we often get a lot of criticisms for only talking about the same books over and over again, but I assure you, in this video, there'll be no Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or Brandon Sanderson or Robin Hobb. Actually, if any of you has read more than 3 books on this list, then I would be thoroughly surprised. So yeah, there will be a lot of unknown books in here, but I can assure you, I think most of these are definitely worth checking out, and you might find some real hidden gems. Alright, let's get into it, and this rating is in no particular order. Also, there will be quite a lot of self-published books in this list. Okay, first up we have The Iron Crown by L.L. McRae. Now, this is a riveting and great epic fantasy that has a lot of dragons in it. I mean, what else can you ask for? What I just loved so much about this book is that it has accessible writing style and it has really great characters, but this world has dragon spirits, which is so fascinating. I remember when I picked up this book, I was just absolutely immersed straight away, and it actually almost saved me from reading some, because I remember when I was reading this book, I had read a lot of books beforehand that I didn't particularly enjoy, and this book just helped me to get so immersed. Now, if you enjoy great characters, great pacing, and worlds with lots of dragons, then I can highly recommend checking out this world. And actually, you can get the prequel novella for free on the author's website, so there's really no excuse to not get into this book. And book 2 was recently released, so if you want to binge this book, the prequel novella and book 2, then now you can. Alright, and next up we have one of the most underrated sci-fi books, at least in my opinion, and that is Mickey 7. Now, I know I haven't read that many sci-fi books, but this book is literally getting an adaptation that is starring Robert Pattinson in next year, I believe so. So literally a studio has bought the rights and is investing millions and millions of dollars into making this book a reality. Now, this is an art copy, so you can see the name of the book here, Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. Now, if you are a fan of Andy Weir especially, then this book should be right up your alley. The writing style is very accessible. It has a unique concept where basically when you die, all your memories are basically stored into a new robot, so you almost kind of get to live forever. And in this world, scientists use these robots to do the most extreme things. So basically, if you agree, then your mind and consciousness will be uploaded to a robot, and you would go out and do some crazy dangerous mission. You would probably die, and then your consciousness will be stored onto another robot, and you would be revived once again. Now, the concept basically is about where suddenly there are 2 of the same persons alive at the same time, and it causes all of different conflicts, and it's just very entertaining, it's interesting, and it has great characters, so I really can't highly recommend it enough. And as I always say, it's always better to read the book before the movie. Alright, book 3, and I don't think I have ever heard anyone talk about this book on Booktube. Not a single person. So this is truly a book that you probably haven't heard about, and I have an art copy. The Liar of Red Valley by Walter Goodwater. So we have the title here, and this is an art copy, and I read this book around 18 months ago, around when I started my channel basically. And this is a horror / gothic novel that also blends a lot of like postmodernistic elements to it, and it is just a wild and crazy ride. It's basically set in our time, but it does have this concept that the city has what is called a liar. So basically, if you have something you want to be hidden from everyone, something that you don't want anyone to know, you can go to the liar and ask them to hide something away from everyone, so no one will know, for example, if you've been unfaithful or if you robbed their bank or whatever. But if you do get a lie, then it does have a significant cost to it. And we're basically following this character Sadie that suddenly becomes this person, the person now that has a responsibility to hide people's lies. And if you think that sounds weird, then I can assure you this novel gets way stranger. I mean, it is just absolutely insane, the things that happen here. Like, we have ghosts, we have an underworld, and so on, but it's just absolutely breakneck pace, and it's truly something different. So if you're looking for something that is a standalone, that is riveting, that is very entertaining, then The Liar of Red Valley is definitely a book you should check out. Alright, and fourthly, we have a book that I very recently finished, and you may have heard about this book, but that is The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. Now, this was originally self-published, and it's since been picked up by Orbit Books, and now it has a new cover, and this is the art copy, and I know it's quite badly beaten up, but now when I went into this book, I expected this book to just be a good time. I didn't expect that much from it, except that I'll probably like just think it was alright, but I don't know what it is. I think it was just right timing when I picked it up, but I just consumed this book. And again, I have to emphasize, this book isn't a new Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, but really, if you are in a reading slump, then check out the combat codes. This book truly feels refreshing because it's based in a world where huge conflicts are not solved over like big wars, but it's solved through duels. So basically these kingdoms, they will train people up from they're very young to be ready to take part in these duels. And for example, there is a big duel later in this book, which it's not a spoiler, but it's basically about like who owns this big piece of land. These two kingdoms are fighting about it, and instead of having these massive wars with lots of armies, they have one person from each nation fighting it out, and whoever wins the land. And this book also has some sci-fi elements, which I thought was really great. It has the mentor trope, which I love, and it has a definite underdog, which I'm always a fan of. Basically an underdog that goes through a lot of training montages, and so yeah, I just love this book. And sometimes we just have to acknowledge that not all books need to be these literary masterpieces to be really enjoyable. The most important thing is, do you enjoy the book? And in the case of the combat codes, I thoroughly enjoyed it and gave it 4.5 stars. Alright, on 5th spot we have one of the most underrated political fantasies I have ever read. Potentially, I'll just say it now, I think it is the most underrated political fantasy I have read in my whole life, which is The Counselor by E.J. Beaton. Now, this book came out around 2 years ago and I got an ER back in the day, and I just loved this book. Really, if you enjoy books that are very character driven but are very heavy on the politics, I mean, this is literally called a Machiavellian fantasy, which is just another term for political fantasy. It has a lot of riveting dialogue. Most of the tension is literally just in the characters talking to each other. It's just so good, and Beaton's writing style is absolutely beautiful, and the ending of this novel is absolutely crazy. And also, this cover is so beautiful. And my mic decided to stop recording at this point. I don't know why, so I don't even know where we were, but I had to record this again. So let's continue, shall we? The next book is the Threadless series, or Voice of War by Zach Argyle. Now, if you are a fan of Brand Ascension, or more specifically the Mistborn trilogy, then I think you would love this series. Firstly, it has a very unique and interesting hard magic system, which is absolutely great. But one of my favorite things about this whole series is that one of the main characters is a parent. As you can see on the cover, we have the father here, and then we have the mother with a small baby here. And we don't really often see parents that often represented in fantasy, so I just love that aspect. And the second thing I love about the series is its length. Look how short it is. It's literally like, if you are reading a lot of big epic fantasies that are like 500 or even 1,000 pages long, then you can very easily fit one of these books in between the bigger reads. And this book has accessible writing style, is well paced, has great characters, and a fascinating magic system. And the whole trilogy is like 1,000 pages, so it is definitely worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of Brandon Sanderson. And then we have We Ride the Storm by Devin Madsen. Now, I think I've only heard one other booktuber ever talked about this book, and firstly, how cool is this cover? But basically, if you are looking for a grim, dark, Asian-inspired fantasy that has a lot of backstabbing and scheming, then this is the novel for you. I don't really know how to explain it, but there's just something overly addictive with this novel, because you can feel the tension increasing throughout the novel, and it's basically set in a world or in an empire that is incredibly unstable and is kind of on the brink of breaking into a huge war, but that hasn't happened yet. And throughout this novel, you can just see how things are starting to plot into place that will most likely lead to a much bigger conflict in book 2, 3, and 4. So yeah, this is a quartet. So as I said, this is quite gritty and it's grimdark. And if you're just a fan of those novels that have a lot of backstabbing and scheming, then this is definitely the novel for you. I've only read the first book as of now, but I will definitely continue, and I had a wonderful time with this one. Next up, we have The Sealed Empire by Norbert, and I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that last name. And I've already made a full spoiler-free dedicated review on my channel for this book, but I'll just have to say, this book is one of the craziest fantasy books I've ever read. It is basically a blend of medieval traditional fantasy. It has some psychological thriller kind of elements, and then also some ridiculously insane sci-fi elements. I mean, literally, the blend of all these different genres, it is mad. but for some reason it just works, and I think that Norbert does a wonderful job at creating so much intrigue and rewarding the reader throughout this novel. And as I said, the ending is one of the most insane, ambitious and crazy endings I have read to a fantasy book. Now I have to mention that this book has some trigger warnings, for example assault, so if you are not good with stuff like that, then definitely keep away from this book. But I just have to say, this is one of the most insane novels I read this year, and I would definitely recommend it. I think most of you would at least find it refreshing, and probably most of you would also thoroughly enjoy it. Alright, and next up we have the Pillars of Peace trilogy, or The Look of a King, which is the first book in the series by Tom Dumbrell, and similar to the Threadeye series, this is a whole trilogy. The whole trilogy is around only 1,000 pages, and each book is around 300 pages, 350 pages, and I know a lot of people say that this is more like a historical fantasy, which I kind of do agree with, because there aren't many fantastical, or if any fantastical elements in this whole series. But what I would say is that if you're looking for a fast-paced, character-driven story that really has some really satisfying and interesting plot twists, then this is the book for you. And what I just love about this series is that every single book you can just see that Tom Dumbrell's writing craft improves. Like, the first book is good, but book 2 is even better, and the third book is the best book in this whole trilogy. And there's just something overly satisfying with reading a fantasy trilogy that isn't 10,000 pages long. Actually, you can just finish a whole trilogy in maybe a month, depending on how fast you read. So yeah, similar to the Threadeye series, if you're reading lots of epic fantasies, consider maybe reading one of these books in between the bigger fantasies, because they just work so well as palate cleansers, and they're also overall very enjoyable. And the last book, and this book isn't underrated on my channel because I have talked about it a lot, but it is underrated in the sense that it doesn't have that many ratings on Goodreads, and more booktubers and people should read it, and that is the Ilbert trilogy, or the Ilbert saga by Daniel T. Jackson. And I'm not gonna spend much time on this one because I have talked about this book. I mean, I do mention it like once a month or something, it feels like. But if you are looking for a very character-driven, overly addictive novel, then this is the book for you. And what is so unique is that this book has 4 primary POVs, and I thoroughly enjoyed all 4 of them, which I'm not sure if I've ever experienced that I've loved all of them equally, but that was the case here. And what I just love about this series as a whole is that most of the chapters almost read like episodes in a series. So like a chapter will have like an introduction, a main body, and then a conclusion with a twist, which makes you just so overly excited to read the next chapter. So as a reader, you are just constantly rewarded as you read this novel. And I know this book is like 800 or 700 pages, but I swear this book felt like it was more like 200 or 300 pages, because you're just constantly being rewarded. The pacing is spot on, and you will just feel for these characters, and there's just so much intrigue. And then Age Will Sin, which is book 2, is in my opinion just as good, which I didn't expect, so it's definitely a series that more people need to check out. Oh, an extra mention, a book that no one talks about on Booktube is Jade City. No, I'm just kidding. We need to stop talking about this book. Thank you so much for watching. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video and got some inspiration to read more books. Now, if you want to support me in any way, then you can check out my Patreon. I have different tiers, and you will get different benefits depending on what tier you support. Some of the benefits include getting your name in my videos, voting rights on my next feed, getting a special role on my Discord server, getting access to one Patreon exclusive video a month, or even art cards and bookmarks signed by my wife and me. Most of the money goes to hiring an editor to do a couple of videos for me a month, which basically allows me to post high quality content more frequently. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and God bless.